can I start then by welcoming Jacinta Tobin and Auntie Carol to give us a welcome to country. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name's Carol Cooper. I'm the daughter of Auntie Joan Cooper, who was born here, and also, we're pleased to say, had the OIM as well as I did. So, as an elder, I'd like to welcome you, say thank you very much for being here today. Today is the day where we talk about a lot of things, just so as we know what we're talking about, and we get a chance to ask the questions.
On behalf of the Darug and Gundungurra people, we'd like to welcome you to country. And I'd like to sing a song for you, but also to acknowledge that we live in such an amazing place, but it was even better. It used to be even better. And hopefully there will be space for us as Aboriginal people to sit at the table more so. We're not here to take from anyone. We just want to share our knowledge so the country is better off for your grandchildren, your great-great-great-great-grandchildren. We always made decisions for 7 generations to come, not 4-year turnarounds. No offence, anyone. So on that note, I'd like to sing a song that my cousin, well, we're all cousins, Cindy Laws wrote. And it was to protect the ADI site down in Penrith. We didn't get to save as much country, but we got to save a bit. And so every time we're very grateful for our small little wins. But the country has had a relationship with our family for a long time. And we realise when we go on country, we get to see things that maybe others didn't get a chance to see. Our land has been forgotten, and our laws are disobeyed. Our people have been changed. Will their souls return to us? Our soul and spirit are one, and we're watching our land disappear. The earth is calling us, and let us all be one. Better go. Better go. The river holds out tears, in the shadow of the tree it hides our shame. The wind carries our voices, and the rain pours down our souls. Better go. Better go. Our colour has been changed, and some spirits will return. Those who are true will walk among us and dream. You must listen to the voices that you hear from afar, and know we walk with you, and know it's time to heal. So come together, learn all our law. Let's come together and heal this land that's ours. Let's all dream together and bring us all to one. Let it go. Bid you go. Yananama. And feel this in your hearts. Because just like everyone here, we love country. As you love country, that's why we live in such a beautiful place. But we can make great change if we all come together as one. Didjurigal.
Thank you so much, Jacinta and Auntie Carol, for that beautiful welcome. We're so lucky. I'm going to now introduce each of our panel participants, and then they'll have a 5-minute statement they'd like to make about the nature laws. Susan Templeman, Federal MP for Macquarie, Special Envoy for the Arts, first elected as the Federal Labor member for Macquarie in 2016. Susan was formerly a journalist and a small business owner. She and her husband lost their home in the 2013 Blue Mountains bushfires and have since rebuilt on the same site. So she's not only a politician, but she is a real participant in the Blue Mountains. Over to you, Susan.
It's lovely to be with you here on Darug and Gundungurra land, and I love that song that Auntie Jacinta just sang. I've heard her sing it many times, and it really touches your heart to think about the trauma that has existed through the First Nations communities. So I pay my respects to our wonderful elders, including Auntie Carol and Auntie Jacinta, and pay respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people who are in the room with us today, and acknowledge just how much we have to learn. And in fact, that is a really key part of the new environment laws. And there's a couple of things I want to be really clear. Often in the last 15 years that I've been working around this community in a political role, I've been talking about things that we would do if we were elected, and if this and if. Today we're talking about something that's happened. It is law, it is in place, and we're in the implementation phase of it. So this is not hypothetical stuff. I'm not going to spend time re-prosecuting things that may or may not have been talked about in the lead up. I'm going to talk about what we've got and why we have it. And most of you will know that this was in response to a very thorough report by Graham Samuel into Environment Laws, which told us something that we already knew. The laws of the day were not working. They weren't working for the environment. And in this community, we were seeing the impacts of that. It also showed that the laws weren't working for industry. But no one had been able to get an update to those laws. And even though Tanya Plibersek worked very hard in our first term in government to do it, it wasn't until our re-election 12 months ago, yesterday, that the Minister, Murray Watt, was able to really put pressure on the Senate to get support. We were very open to who we would negotiate with around these laws. We were happy to negotiate with either the Coalition or with the Greens. As it was, the laws that we passed were passed with the support of the Greens. And I personally am very pleased that that's the way it landed. So there are 3 pillars in the EPBC Act. One is stronger environmental protection and restoration, and that's really key, restoration. Number 2 is a more efficient and robust project approvals process. And number 3 is greater accountability and transparency in decision making, and that's built into the laws. They're not just about delivering better protections, but restoring and regenerating for future generations. So the more efficient and robust approvals process will allow us to better respond and deliver on some of the national priorities we have, and housing would be one of those, and renewables projects would be another example of that. But there is also greater accountability. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things that have most recently happened as the implementation gets underway. Because it is a work in progress, but a lot has happened in just even the last couple of weeks. So those laws were passed in December. Some of the amendments are already up and running. For example, the changes that we made to regulate at a federal level, agricultural land clearing are already in place, but there are more things that will come online this year. One is national environment standards, and this week we released for the second time, for a second round of consultation, the first draft of the national environment standards that will underpin the reforms, and there'll be more of those coming. The first one is around matters of national environmental significance, and very soon we expect to release for consultation a standard regarding environmental offsets. Two more are going to follow, one around the sort of data and information that proponents of a project need to put forward when they apply for environmental assessments and approval, and then there's another around community engagement. And these are setting national standards that have never before existed. We've also just released some draft protection statements, and we're piloting these. There are 5 threatened species ones. One is the Regent honeyeater, very pertinent to our community. And this is a new tool that's being introduced under the reformed EPBC Act that is about recovery plans and conservation advice to set out what must be protected to ensure a species survival in the wild. So there's some of the tangible things that have occurred. Really key is the bilateral agreements that we will have with each state, because states will be given powers to do assessments, but they have to meet federal standards, and no doubt we'll have more conversation about that. The other thing that's really key is we're looking for a head for the new Environment Protection Agency. Now, never before has Australia had a national EPA, and that is another really key part of these reforms. These are unprecedented. It lifts our standards and brings them into the 21st century, and it will be with input from some of these panel members and the organisations they represent that will make sure that we get these right as we go through. And so there are national standards for the first time that protect this land, but more importantly restore it for my children and hopefully my grandchildren when I eventually get them. So thank you for being interested in the law and what we've done, and look forward to having more detailed discussion about it and hearing any other issues relating to these laws that you want to raise.
The next speaker is our Mayor, Mark Greenhill, Mayor of the Blue Mountains City Council since 2013, first elected as the Labor councillor in 1999 and Mayor in 2013. In 2016, Councillor Greenhill received the OAM for services to local government and the Blue Mountains community.
This is a bit of an interesting one for me to be at, because essentially these laws draw federal and state governments together. So people are probably wondering why a mayor is on the panel, but there's good reason for that. The proposed overhaul of federal environment laws, which is often framed as replacing the EPBC in 1999, has several upsides for local government, and these are really important upsides. Firstly, as we see it, there are clearer and faster approval pathways. So if the reforms succeed in streamlining approvals, councils may face fewer delays when dealing with developments that trigger environmental issues. One of the things we see now is that, and we've got an example right at the moment out at Narrowneck, is that we have to wade through a bunch of layers before we can actually deal with the real issues pertaining to those developments. So we're hoping that the bilateral agreements will make it simpler for us to have our voice heard in that process. We're hoping that this will reduce, I guess, some duplication too in terms of how local government communicates to both state and federal processes. Now, the second area is better regional planning tools. The shift towards regional environmental plans is something that was recommended as part of the Graham Samuel review, and it means that councils could get clearer guidance, and this is really important, on where development is appropriate. This helps with zoning, it helps with strategic planning, and you know what? It helps with defending decisions in the Land and Environment Court, and that's really important. Thirdly, hopefully, there might be some more funding and support The creation of national environmental institutions like our first ever National Environmental Protection Authority may come with some funding streams, or at the very least partnership programs. So local councils could benefit from grants, from data, from technical support for conservation and compliance. Now, data and technical support for conservation and compliance cannot be overemphasised enough. That will be a real help to us as local governments moving forward. Fourthly, reduced legal risks come from clearer standards. So stronger and more defined national environmental standards make it easier for councils to align our planning instruments. This reduces ambiguity and reduces to us the risk of legal challenges when approving or rejecting developments. Fifth, improved environmental outcomes locally, healthier ecosystems, better protected biodiversity, better protected waterways and green spaces. These all translate directly into benefits for our local community. Councils can manage these assets more strongly, more resolutely, with the federal protection and support that is provided by these changes. 6, and there's only 7, greater community trust. And this is really important. If the new laws improve transparency and enforcement, and we believe they will, councils may find it easier to maintain public confidence in planning decisions, especially in contentious areas. And by planning decisions, I mean planning decisions that run both ways, decisions to reject, decisions to approve. If you've got greater community trust through greater transparency, clearer laws and better enforcement, then this is a great benefit, I think, to communities like ours. And finally, data and mapping improvements. The federal reforms, we believe, will clearly bring about better environmental data systems. Access to high quality, standardised data significantly improves local planning and decisions and reduces costs for councils. So overall, we see these reforms as extremely important, very positive, and look, like Susan, I enjoy the fact that the laws were passed by the federal parliament by the progressive sides of the federal parliament, as opposed to needing to involve the perhaps less progressive side of parliament. Thank you, Roy.
Our next panellist is Brad Smith. He's Policy and Advocacy Director on the Nature Conservation Council. Brad has been at NCC for 10 years and has led campaigns including Protection for Old Growth Forests and Repower New South Wales. He previously worked as an advisor in federal government and has 18 years of campaigning and advocacy experience. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Roy. And thanks so much for this really important forum. And these are important laws, and I want to say congratulations to the federal government and Susan for passing them. Our old laws were completely out of date. And we all expect that our national environment laws, our nature laws, would protect nature. And they didn't. They didn't. The Samuel Review found that they were contributing to the destruction of nature. And so the question we have today that I want to address is, well, does this updated law fix that? Do these laws now protect nature? And there's 3 examples I want to go to cut through some of the confusion. The first one is native forest logging. And I'm just going to start a timer to make sure I don't go over, because I'm passionate about native forest logging. 1 million hectares of New South Wales' best forests are being logged, are open for logging by the New South Wales Forestry Corporation. And they log in the habitat of nationally endangered species like koalas and greater gliders. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a camp of citizen scientists up in the Styx River forest near Armidale, a few hours north of here. Forestry Corp's gone in there, they've got their machines, they're ready to log. And the citizen scientists went in searching for glider dens. Under New South Wales laws, if you find a glider den, they can't cut it down. They found 440 of these dens. This is for a species that's endangered under our national laws. Forestry Corporation had found only 4 of those dens before they went logging. And a den is a big old gum tree with a big hollow in it. Greater gliders are large creatures. These large hollows take hundreds of years to form. So to go in there and cut those trees down It's absolutely taking away one of the most vital resources in the forest and undermining and sending that endangered species towards extinction. So that's a problem mostly for Trish Doyle, our state member, who's not here because it's a state-run forestry industry. But one of the upsides of the new federal laws is they removed an exemption. So now logging has to meet the federal standards. And will the new federal laws stop this kind of logging? Honestly, I don't think they will. Sadly, I don't think they will. And as they're currently written, and there's still parts of it being, consulted on, but the current standard for matters of national environmental significance that was released a couple of days ago, it doesn't provide that kind of clarity. It will not stop the logging of those forests. Maybe if those forests contain the very last hollows, of the very last gliders, then they would be protected. But until they're really in the emergency room, these laws won't save them. The second example I wanted to go to is coal mining. Climate, as we know, is one of the biggest threats to nature, and here in the Blue Mountains we're more than aware of the way that it's supercharging bushfire seasons and heat waves and making life harder for our endangered species. And we have a couple of coal mines just west of here, the Centennial Coal Run, under the Gardens of Stone area, just on the edge of the World Heritage Area. And that coal company, the multinational coal company, is applying for 2 new extensions to those coal mines to keep undermining more of the nationally endangered swamps up there. They want to pour more polluted water into Sydney's drinking water catchment. And of course that coal will continue to heat the climate. So will the laws stop those coal mine extensions from going ahead? No. And I think the most outrageous part of these laws, the bit that I find most inexplicable, is that they don't even assess the climate impacts of any development. There's no federal law that assesses the climate harms caused by developments. We just don't have it. So that ball is through to the keeper, and the keeper again is Trish Doyle, who's sadly not here, but that's on the state government, who does have climate targets and does do climate assessments, but did approve a coal mine just a couple of weeks ago. So again, the answer is no. And the third issue I wanted to raise was land clearing, broad-scale land clearing in agricultural land. Since the Minns government, the state government, was elected in 2023, land clearing's jumped by 40% in New South Wales, and we're losing around 60,000 hectares of bush every year. Lots of endangered species out there losing their habitat. One of the most recent ones to go on the list was the Gangang cockatoo. Beautiful cockatoos, we see them around the mountains. They're going extinct because their trees are being cut down with the hollows in them that they need. The new laws do have new standards for land clearing, but the trouble with land clearing is it happens property by property, and no one is referring any of that land clearing to the federal government. And under the new laws, my understanding is that will continue to happen. That property by property land clearing will happen, and none of it will even be looked at by the federal government. So that's another cross for these laws. What lesson do we take from all that? The state government is responsible for all of these matters as well. So these laws don't fix those problems. They do fix some things, but it's 3 big jobs that the state government, I think, needs to pick up on, and we have a state election in less than a year. So I would encourage everybody to knock on Trish's door, send her an email. I mean, she has a long to-do list when it comes to the environment. I know she does, and we need to support her hand and work towards that election and make sure that we know that our state laws need to be stronger as well.
Okay, our next panel member is Annette Cam, Senior Vice President, Blue Mountains Conservation Society. Annette was Blue Mountains Conservation Society President from 2023 until April 2026. And has contributed to submissions on protected area plans, the WSI airport flight plans, mumble, mumble, the federal nature laws, environmental standards, and invasive species management. Thanks, Annette.
I did help co-write our response to the nature laws and to the standards, but I'm certainly not an expert in what these new laws are. But I do know that people in Australia care very much about our natural heritage. So the annual Biodiversity Concerns Survey of 2025 showed that public concern for biodiversity, 96% of Australians believe that more action is needed to look after the natural environment. 86% of Australians have expressed concern over the decline of native plants and animals in their local area. 88% of Australians feel that it is important to know that our environment is being looked after. The majority of Australians are inclined to spend time in nature. Vast majority of Australians, 95%, believe that more of the federal budget should be dedicated to nature protection. 3 in 4 Australians support strengthening environmental laws to protect nature and establishing the national standards. There's strong public support regarding native forest logging under national law. The majority of Australians do not think that the Australian government is doing a good job protecting the environment. But along with that, 1 in 4 Australians, less than 1 in 4 Australians, place strong trust in any political party or candidate to protect the natural environment. So whilst I also acknowledge that these new laws are hopefully much better than what we've had, I think there's still quite a long way to go to convince Australians that we're actually going to succeed in protecting our wonderful environment. You would know that the Society's area of concern is the Greater Blue Mountains World Heritage Area and all those adjacent natural areas that surround it, as well as that border our LGA. And you would think that as a declared UNESCO World Heritage Area, why do we even need to write a submission about the standards or the nature laws for this area? But we do still need to be really concerned. The UNESCO states in its guidance and toolkit for impact assessments in a World Heritage context that changes both within and outside the World Heritage properties need to be managed in line with the Convention's objectives. So in other words, what they're saying is what happens outside the World Heritage Area, as well as what happens inside the World Heritage Area, if that has a negative impact on the outstanding universal values, it needs to be a controlled action. So we also need to take account of what might happen beyond our borders. And that includes the potential impacts of Western Sydney Airport, of course, once the flights stop. But it's also, if we have animals, birds, bats, other animals moving between the forests, the endangered forests of the Cumberland Plain into the World Heritage eucalypt forests, that is also something that we need to make sure continues. Otherwise, our beautiful eucalyptus trees won't be pollinated and our rainforest seeds won't be distributed, because that's what the birds and the bats do. So it's very important that we also look after those bat camps down on the Cumberland Plain, and that we still allow the honeyeaters to continue their migration across the Blue Mountains from the Sydney area through the Blue Mountains and beyond. Those things are very important, not just looking exactly what's within our borders. I think Australia could actually be at the forefront of protecting what remains of our natural environment, because as Susan mentioned, restoring and regenerating is really important. And there are great examples of that being done around Australia in different places. So just a couple of weeks ago, I read that there have been populations of night parrots discovered in Western Queensland that were never known to be there before. So if we look after the land and we look after our animals, then things will return. The New South Wales State of the Environment report shows that our environment is not doing very well, and most things are on the decline. Every single one of 5 indicators for abundance, biodiversity, threatened species for plants and animals has declined. And so I think one of the tests of our new environment laws will be in a couple of years when they do another scorecard, will things be looking up? And hopefully they will be. Susan alluded to this, that on recently, and it was actually April the 30th, so that's last Thursday, revised standards for the matters of national environmental significance were released again for public consultation, and that consultation ends on the 29th of May. So we get another chance to look at what has been proposed. I'm pleased to say on a very, very brief look that there's a lot that we discussed and other conservation societies wanted to be included in there that is. They've strengthened a lot of the language to make it legally more enforceable.
Martin Mansfield. He's representing the Australian Conservation Foundation, Greater Western Sydney Community Group. Martin leads ACF's Greater Western Sydney Group with members in the Blue Mountains and Hawkesbury. The group supports national campaigns and local action, including koala habitat conservation and citizen science on land clearing. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here today. Although I live in Baulkham Hills, I have a long-term connection with the mountains. My mum and dad bought a block of land in Wentworth Falls for $3,300, imagine that, and built a kid home for $33,000 in 1981. So I've spent a lot of time in the mountains, and it's a really special place for me. I think we'd all agree that nature is in a bad way at local, state, national and international levels. In some places, it is under threat. We see that, for example, here in the Blue Mountains with the proposals for a glamping resort in Gardens of Stone National Park and for a housing development on Narrow Neck Road here in Katoomba that Mark mentioned. In some places, nature is in crisis, and in some, it is virtually in collapse. ACF, Australian Conservation Foundation, is very pleased that the Albanese government introduced some significant improvements to Australia's nature protection laws last year, and Susan and Brad have talked about a number of those. But that brings us to the crux of today's forum. Will these new nature laws work? Now, they will only be a piece of paper unless they are implemented effectively. And there are several things that must be done to ensure that this happens. Firstly, we need strong national environmental standards, and reference has been made to those. Standards that clearly state what the expected outcomes of the laws are. Standards that make clear what kind of development is not even worth proposing. But sadly, the early signs about the standards are not good. The draft standard on matters of national environmental significance that Susan and Annette have mentioned, while they are better than the previous draft, the new draft says that a developer will be consistent with the standard if they comply with some principles and follow certain processes. There is no requirement to actually deliver the outcomes and objectives stated in the standard. This is simply not good enough. We also need a strong national environment protection agency, an agency that is independent and makes all the significant decisions about proposed developments without ministerial involvement except in certain specified exceptional circumstances. An agency that is properly resourced and properly funded. An agency that has effective compliance and enforcement powers. It's also important to ensure that the different levels of government are singing from the same song sheet. ACF has a dedicated team and also hundreds of citizen scientists who are identifying and investigating possible illegal land clearing for agriculture. Some examples have been found of clearing that has happened in Queensland, and I actually have some photos of examples on the table at the back. But landholders have explained when ACF investigators have asked them that even though the new laws are in operation, they've been told incorrectly by the relevant state government department that they don't need to get approval from the federal government. So obviously there needs to be some education at the state government level on that. But if all these things are to happen, there is something else that is vital. That is a change in mindset of our politicians, our governments, the leaders of corporations, and the broader community. Susan, and I know this applies also to Mark and Trish, I know you do get it. And in your cases, I'm preaching to the converted. But in my experience, too many politicians just don't get it. They don't share the emotional connection to nature and wildlife as we all do. But I think that is a real issue. So what is that change in mindset? Firstly, it's a recognition that nature and the economy and human society are not somehow separate. They are in fact inextricably linked. ACF calculated last year that 49% of Australia's GDP, $896 billion, has a moderate to very high dependence on nature. So if nature collapses, so will our economy and society. But more broadly than that, it is a recognition that we humans are not the only species that matters. All species have an inherent value and an inherent right not just to survive, but to prosper. This means that we have a responsibility to protect and conserve nature. Yes, like all species, we use natural resources, but we have to do it in a way that is sustainable, that doesn't trash nature. And of course, we have to recognise that there are way more important things than money, that nature shouldn't be at the mercy of the profit motive. A change in mindset like this will really see our laws protect nature, not just in theory, but more importantly, in practice. Thank you.